Some people say that it's wrong to have sex outside of marriage, but as long as it's not hurting anyone else, what business is it of theirs? How could it be wrong if it doesn't hurt anyone? Let's consider. Hello philosophers, I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. This is going to seem like a little bit of a tangent, but I promise it's going to be relevant, somewhat. I like to ask students questions about themselves to get to know them. And once I asked my class to identify a pet peeve of theirs. One student said, slut-shaming. She pointed out that it wasn't fair that men who are promiscuous are considered studs, women who are promiscuous are labeled sluts. So the neologism was invented, slut-shaming. And someone in the class pointed out how weird it was that women shamed other women about this. And I remember thinking, that is weird. Why would women shame each other over this? It's not like it hurts you if another woman is promiscuous. But of course, being the philosopher that I am, I try to make sense of it. And I think I came up with a reasonable explanation. Not that this is right or this is good. This is just a possible explanation of how that behavior arose. Imagine a girl, we'll call her Jezebel, that is very attractive and very good at having sex. Now, when you've had something that's really good, it makes it difficult to be satisfied with something that's less so. Let's say Jezebel goes and sleeps with all the guys that there are. This means all the guys that there are going to be less satisfied with their spouses sexually if they don't measure up to Jezebel. So it increases the chances that they will be promiscuous while they are married. They will impregnate other women and take away resources from the children they had with their spouse. This disrupts social order, and hence women will treat the Jezebels of the world with scorn, whether knowingly or subconsciously, to dissuade this kind of antisocial behavior. Again, not saying that's right. In fact, I'm not sure that shaming is ever the right thing to do. But that got me thinking, the dissatisfaction reasoning here sounds a lot like my ignorance is bliss argument given earlier in this playlist against promiscuity. To review, here's the basic structure of the argument that I gave. All humans want to be happy. Relationships are instrumental to our happiness. We seem to be social creatures. The relationship most conducive to our happiness or most impeding of it is marriage. Sex outside of marriage, promiscuity, harms your chances of having a happy marriage, so humans should avoid promiscuity. Then I gave 3 reasons for believing that promiscuity would hurt your ability to have a happy marriage. Not impossible, but would harm your ability. The first one I said was the sealing the deal argument. The gravity of losing your virginity is intended to coincide with the gravity of getting married. Sex or sexual activity prior to marriage trivializes that, and hence trivializes marriage. So it hurts your chances of a happy marriage. Argument 2 was the brain chemistry argument. Your brain releases certain hormones and chemicals during sex or sexual activity. This creates a binding experience with the person you're engaging these activities with. The more you do so and fail to stay with that person that you've had sex or sexual relations with, the more you damage your brain's ability to be receptive of this binding relation. But this is one of our brain's great tools to keep people in marriage together through tough times. So you're damaging your chances of having a happy marriage. And finally, I gave you the ignorance is bliss argument. The more sex you have with people other than your spouse, the more fodder you have for discontent. The more examples you have, in other words, of people that might be different or even better than your spouse at doing the things that you're doing. So these are 3 reasons why promiscuity is against your self-interest. I actually have some additional reasons, but I'll go over those some other time. But then in comparing the ignorance is bliss argument to the reasoning about Jezebel that I gave in this video, it struck me that the harm that you do to yourself in being promiscuous also occurs to your partner. The sex or sexual relations that you have with that person will also harm their ability to have a happy marriage. Again, won't make it impossible for them to have a happy marriage, but will definitely harm their ability and possibly interfere with it. Things like damaging their brain's receptivity to that binding relation, making them dissatisfied with their partners. Now, let me say that I don't enjoy thinking about this, and I'm ashamed to say it, and I really hope this isn't disappointing to you philosophers out there, but I want to be totally honest. I did some of these things. I say this so you know that I'm not being hateful or judgmental. I would be a total hypocrite if I were, but it brings up an important philosophical question in my mind. The big question here is my partner's harm at all my fault? We might think, people make their own choices. As long as our partners are consenting adults, how can I be blamed? Your choice is 100% yours, so your blame is 100% yours. But then I think reasoning this way gets things confused. First, because blame shouldn't be meted out in that way. When we argue like this, and we often do, I think what we do is we look at things as an event and then assign the 100% of blame accordingly for the event itself. We assign 100% of a person's choice to them because they're totally responsible for their choice, and then there's nothing left over for the other person. The problem is, in this event, there are actually two people choosing to do things. The consenting person was definitely 100% responsible for choosing the action that they chose to engage in, but you are also 100% responsible for your own choices as well, and you're contributing to that. So it's not so easy as saying 100% is your choice, therefore 100% is your fault. So now the question is, when we aid others in harming themselves, are we also to blame? Now imagine a friend of yours comes up to you and says, I'm very sad, I want to shoot myself, could you please let me use your gun? Should you offer them your gun? Well, now this person is 100% responsible for shooting themselves if you do, but you also provided that gun, and you're 100% responsible for providing that thing that eventually resulted in their harm. Or another example, let's say your friend was addicted to heroin, but has been off it for a long time. You happen to have heroin in your pocket, and let's say you pull it out, you start waving it under that person's nose. To be honest, I don't really know what heroin looks like in the first place, but let's say you waft it under their nose and they, let me have that smack. And let's say you give it to them. And let's say they OD. Are you responsible for them dying? Well, it was 100% their choice to actually inject themselves with the heroin. But what about you choosing to waft it over there, choosing it to offer to that person? It seems like you still have some responsibility for the eventual harm that comes to that person. And that seems very analogous to our situation here. If we know that the sex that we have with somebody who is not our spouse, even if it's not our spouse yet, will eventually lead to a harm in them having an eventually happy marriage, then although they are responsible for their choices, I think it's plausible that we're responsible for providing them with that opportunity. One final response you could give is, well, they could get it anywhere, right? So may as well get it from me. But then again, your friend could get heroin anywhere, but you wafting it under your friend's nose sure seems like you providing that heroin, even though they could have gotten it elsewhere, was a bad thing and made you somewhat blameworthy. So yeah, here's another possible reason to avoid promiscuity. Not only does it harm you, but it harms the person that you're engaging in promiscuity with. So if we're thinking about having these promiscuous relations with someone, I think it behooves us beforehand to think about the harm that would come to them. Well, that's all I got for today. Remember, the best philosophy happens in dialogue, so please let me know what you think. And again, I'm not saying these things to be judgmental, right? I'm hoping to start a dialogue, maybe throw some thoughts out there, but it would be totally hypocritical of me to judge anybody for what they chose to do here. Also, please like, subscribe, and tag a friend that might enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you next time. Adios.